thanks again for being here. Thanks for sharing your story. I think there's a lot of, you're an entrepreneur, you own your own company, and there's a lot of women out there who own their own companies who are feeling overwhelmed by the pace of keeping a business afloat, trying to manage your kids, your husband, your life. And it's like, what about me? Right. And so I guess where we could start is when you came into the program, where were you at and what were you looking for? In other words, what was the genesis of saying, okay, because I remember you talking about why you started your company and some of those things, but maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started my company 8 years ago, and it was just a couple months after my oldest daughter was born. So it was a major family change. And it was the perfect, in the beginning, it was, a neat way to start a business, because as I was building the business so I didn't have tons of work, my daughter and then my son came along a year later, were young. So that was just a little bit. And then as it built, it became, a full-time job as the kids were getting into preschool, which was perfect. But then it became more than that. And the way we've arranged things in our family, this business was the way for me to be very flexible, so that I could be the one taking the kids to school and picking them up. And what that meant is that my time all kind of conglomerated together. There was no sort of set work time, end work time, and any time could be anything, whether work or kids or family or whatever. And so the lines got convoluted, and I just became somebody, just in order to get the work done, I was working every minute that I wasn't doing kid stuff, a lot of time on the weekends, and I wasn't able to define and put a container around, this is work time, this is family time. And so my boundaries were really pretty not great. And, it was causing a lot of stress on the family, because it wasn't clear, mom's going to be off working at this time during the weekend or whatever that was. And so nobody really knew what was coming next. And I have pretty spirited kids, and that was a problem for them. Nobody knew, and my husband didn't know. So anyway, so that's so the genesis of this happened because, I had a real challenge with managing my time.
Yeah.
It was causing a lot of stress. Yeah.
Sure. And I remember when we first talked, Beth, you were saying how the kids and your husband might go off to the lake, or they would go off bike riding, and they were doing these things on the weekend, but then that was your chance to catch up. And so what was happening is you were working and mothering and working and mothering and erranding and, and working and mothering. And so there was never a time when you got to live in the moment with your family and just go out in the boat or, spend some time for yourself. Right. Yeah. And so it sounds like that. I mean, that was pretty clear to me when you came in. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, definitely. And that is still a weakness of mine, to take time for myself and say that's okay to take it. And thanks to this, I've been able to look at that in the face and say, okay, well, you need that, and work through that. But also, I do have to work on the weekends to some extent, because I am running around so much, on the weekend or during the week, but putting that in a box so that the other time we're doing fun stuff outside or whatever it is as a family. So.
Yes. Being able to draw some better lines and some better expectations, I think, both inside of yourself for what the day should look like, as well as your family. Okay. Yeah. I love it. So what are some of the things that you really wanted to accomplish, I guess, moving through the program, and where are you at? So maybe kind of give us where's your outcome, because you're getting ready to graduate and you had some pretty big goals coming into the program. So where are you at, and what's next?
So I think, where am I at? So I'm still, I had these very big goals. The other piece of this is that my business was and continues to be in a challenging financial place, just in that, and it was had a lot to do with part of what I've been also learning through you, Kate, and through some other areas that you introduced me to, is that, having, looking at our profit is really important, as opposed to just looking at our revenue. So I'd been focused on my revenue the whole time, and we were doing fine from a revenue point of view, but we were borrowing for cash flow. And so not through this journey. We are not on top of this, but I've learned a ton. And so as far as goals go, I mean, my big overarching goal on that side is to get out of debt and be comfortable from a cash flow perspective. And we've taken lots of strides, but that's definitely, we're in that journey. So that's where I am in that. I think, as far as the work-life family balance, I've definitely, gathered these wonderful tools, but there's some deep stuff in me that I'm definitely still working on. And I'm definitely feeling every day more confident that I can get through it, but there's some deep stuff. And, I think what I've been learning is that our stuff, unresolved stuff from childhood, affects our parenting, it affects our business, and it affects it at a really fundamental level. So, I'm in the journey.
You are in the journey. You are in the journey. So I love that. Let's give some color to that, because what you're really talking about, Beth, is so for everyone who may be watching this, right? One of the things we teach women is about scripts, psychological scripts. It's just way of looking at the life of your life and making decisions that you've adopted since childhood. So Beth, one of your scripts is nurture, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So as a nurturer, it feels better in some ways for you to take care of everyone else and then put yourself last. But what happens is because it's a compulsion, you end up really missing out on what you need in life. And that can affect your business, like agreeing to do, work for, very little money. And so now we're not profitable. It feels good in the moment because you're like, okay, I'll do that job for you, or, I'll help you and that. But then what happens is, and you end up paying the price because now you have a company that's not as, cash flow positive as you want. Or same thing with parenting, right? We allow our kids to kind of, not that we're allowing them, but they demand. And at the end of the night, we drop into bed and we're like, wait, what have I done for myself today? Right.
Yep.
So when you talk about being on the journey, you've made some significant progress, just based on what you told me in the help desk not too long ago. I mean, you have set up new financial parameters for your company. You have set up all the bank accounts. You've set up everything you need, and you're starting to shift your clients into different types of payment structure.
Yep.
That's huge. Like, I just want to stop for a second and say, you can't turn a company on a dime, right? Like, you can't just pivot, but
right.
You have made some incredibly huge shifts for you and your team and your clients, your customers. Do you feel that?
No. Yeah. And actually I was just, my office manager and I were just chatting just before getting on this call about, where are we at, and let's celebrate the fact that, we've not had an issue making payroll in 6 weeks. I mean, that's
huge.
That's huge. I mean, that's where I was at. And, looking ahead, what are we setting up in place for the winter when it gets slow, so that we don't, this is an easier time of year because we're in the construction industry, we're flush right now, but what can we do in the winter to avoid that, and balance everything. And the other big thing is, this is diving into the weeds here, but, we've made a committed effort to looking at collections every week. And for somebody that's a nurturer and doesn't like to, ooh, is it okay? That's hard for me, but it's absolutely essential. So,
yeah. And that's what I love, because that's the core, like that's the sweet spot, because you're changing you and how you see the world. And so if I said to you when we first met, 8 weeks ago, hey, Beth, from now on, I want you to call your customers every single week and collect on what they owe you, you would have been like, okay, that's great. And not done it. You know what I mean? Because it feels so uncomfortable to you.
Yeah.
But now that you know where that's coming from, it's like, wait a minute. Okay, I can do this thing that's uncomfortable. And as you're continuing to peel back that script, it'll just become more comfortable, and there won't be any emotion around it anymore. It'll just be, hey, calling you because you're behind in what you owe us and we need to get this rectified. And it won't be like a big, huge mind, exhausting thing. Yeah. So I'm super impressed. Yeah. Listen to all the stuff you just talked about. That's great. You're being very strategic. You're being focused on profit, and it's okay. You're giving yourself permission that it's okay to focus on profit, right?
Yeah. Because, in my family, another script is that, whatever having to do with money, it's greedy to have a lot or whatever. And,
yep.
even though that's still there, this is the stuff that I'm talking about isn't about being greedy. It's just like,
pay your bills.
Yeah. You know, peeling back those layers, but you know, but in that moment when I think, you know, when somebody's like, well, can we just do this for like half the price? You know, I wish I could, but sorry.
Move on. Yes, move on. And it's okay to say no, right? It's okay to say, we'd love to help you, but we do have value on our services. And that's a big deal. So I think you're right. You're in the thick of it, because changing that behavior and changing that customer expectation is going to take a little bit of time, but you're moving in a direction much quicker, you know, and it's no longer taking you it's taking you less and less time, because before you were like, how do I make this company work? How do I make this company work? How do I keep it afloat? How do I keep it afloat?
Yeah.
So let's talk about some other stuff you're doing, because you're working, and one of the things I want to celebrate, Beth, is that you are doing a lot of big things in your life. I mean, you're working on your health, you're working on, you know, changing your company to be a profitable business model. You're working on new ways to just enjoy your family and for you guys to communicate differently as a family, so it's more joyful and not so harried and crazy, and, you know, we all get just gripey at each other. So what are some other steps that you've learned, or some other things that you're doing maybe that you could share on, I don't know, health or family or any of that type of stuff?
Yeah, well, on the health side, this is a celebration. It just so happens my kids were with my parents a couple weeks ago for the week. And so I took the time, which is I probably would not have done before this, but I took the time that 2 nights that week, I went and I worked out. So that made it so that I worked out 3 times that week. And with that momentum, then the following week, I had an opportunity that the kids were with a babysitter for one day. And so I had her stay a little late, and I went and I worked out. And so last week was 2 days. And then this week, the same babysitter who's going to school offered to come for 2 evenings just for an hour. And I went in, so I worked out 3 times this week too, which,
look at you.
I know, I feel so good. It makes such a difference. You know, I love working out, and I have always, even though I haven't done it as much as I like to, I've always maintained doing it once a week. And the difference between once and 3 times a week is humongous.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's huge. Yes. And then that just pours out into everything else in your life. You have more patience with your kids. You have more patience for your business. You can sleep better. You're rested. I mean, like, good for you. Look at you, nurture, putting yourself first again, because you could have taken that hour and done the dishes, you know, or worked on billing or something horrible. Right?
Yeah. So what I don't have is one like that in place coming up, but I guess I'm approaching this things with a much more open mind. Like, oh, there's an opportunity, I'm taking it, as opposed to, oh, I'm sure there's something else I could do at that time.
Yeah. No, so. I love that. I mean, I was thinking about that because this morning I worked out, but I didn't get my whole workout done just because life happened, right? And so I know I've got this other 15 minutes like I have to work in some point today, but it's like, it will get done today. I don't know when, but it's a priority, and I'm a priority, and it'll get done, right? Yeah. And that's what you're doing. So that's fantastic.
It makes such a huge difference. Like,
it does.
A sense of well-being. It's huge.
It does. Well, any advice you have, because one of the things that I think I have seen in you, Beth, is that when you came into this program, like you hit the ground running, like you attacked it. You have been gobbling up the resources, the knowledge we've given you. You have shown up coachable. I mean, you are just like, okay, Kate, here's how I'm going to apply this to my life. What do you think? Here's it. You know, you're listening to podcasts, you're reading books, and you're really assimilating this. So what has you on fire? In other words, what has you, Beth, saying, the way I was living before, good life, like, you know, but I want best life. Like, where did that come from?
You mean like what was happening that wasn't feeling good that made this fire?
It could be, yeah, because I feel like a lot of us we sort of, especially women, we're just sort of like, this is just what it is. You know, I guess life's just kind of hard, you know, and you're like, no, like you're like.
Well, so I think that fire is just part of me. I mean, my kids are spirited kids. My husband is a spirited kid. I grew up as a spirited kid, and I think that's where some of my scripts come from, like diffusing that. And so it's always been there, but the weight of all of my responsibilities was so great that the spiritedness just came out as not handling my emotions well or whatever. And so there was this, I don't know, I think it was just a wonderful chance meeting of knowing that there was, that it just wasn't balanced. And I happened to see your program come up, and I tried other things too, but like to immerse myself in something. I've done this in another time in my life when I had a really big upheaval, and it's so healing to be able to just build. I mean, then in a sense, this whole thing is self-care. Build that in for the time period that it is, and live in it, and, build on it. The podcasts, like, it's just absorb it, just, infuse it. And so, I don't know, that's the best I can describe it. But for me, having it come, at different times, and watching a video here or listening to a podcast there and doing the coaching calls, to reinforce all these things and infuse it is the way I really learned the best, I think. So, especially when my mindset has been in such a different place for a while. So
that's awesome. No, that's awesome. And I think that's right, because that's really how it is designed. You have changed you, right? You have changed your mindset. You have changed your psychology. You are changing your physiology. Like, you are, and this science is really relatively new in some ways to, in the last 20 years, where human behavioral scientists and psychologists are starting to wait, we actually can change as people, because we think, oh, this is my personality. This is just the way I'm wired. This is just, the way life is, but you can change who you are. And when we change who we are and how we adapt to or react to situations, now we start getting a different result, right? Yeah. And that's kind of what that immersion piece is. And I think what you've done such a great job at is you've really immersed yourself and just said, bring it. How do I continue to just get to that next level? Because I don't think it's about, for any of us, being there's something dramatically wrong, right? It's just, okay, I've gotten to this level. This is good, but now it's not good enough. And now I want to get someplace else, right? And I feel like that's how you attack this and really come to the program. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think too, the piece that is underlying all of this, and what I love about what you've put together, is that, there are underlying things from childhood, scripts that create these things. And if we don't understand those, and if we don't dive into our psychology, we just keep repeating it. And so this is a wonderful opportunity and a framework to do that. It's hard to do that, not just because it's hard to look at it, but it's hard to, if you were going to work with a therapist, for example, to find a good match or whatever it is. It's not an easy thing to access. Yeah. And you've built some wonderful tools around really accessing it. And I think that is really the key to really moving past stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, and I totally hear what you're saying, because again, if we don't change the way that we've adapted since childhood, then we can change the action. But if the belief is still there, we're going to still repeat the action, just in a different way. And then we wonder, why am I not getting the real change I want to see in my life? Right. You got to get below the surface. And I know that took me, 12 years to discover. I just kept hitting my head going, why is nothing changing? Oh, maybe I need to change.
Right.
And once I had that realization, then I could start, discovering what I needed to discover to change my mental game. And then it was like, and then you can try the strategies and see what works. Right. So,
right. Yep.
And that's kind of what you're in the process for. Well, cool. Well, Beth, next steps for you is, now you have the framework, and that's the important piece, which is, what to do. And so it's just a matter of, continuing to make these shifts to get to where you want to be. Right. Mm-hmm. Which is super exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything specific that you see around the corner for yourself? Is it just it sounds like you've got some great strategies for your company. So that's exciting.
Yeah. just keeping going with those. To be profitable, and, there's the when money is tight, it's a real stressor. And so taking that off will be amazing. And we're taking great strides toward that. But I think the other big thing that I'm working on that we haven't touched on too much you know, I have two very spirited children, and, you know, parenting them is the biggest, you know, growth opportunity ever because, you know, they find those triggers, those buttons like nobody else. And so, you know, we're working through some new strategies to help them manage this sort of exuberance that they have that can go sideways sometimes. And, you know, my husband and I are learning along the way, and it's, you know, it's not an easy journey because we're not figuring it out right away on the dime as quickly as needed to, you know, not have some conflict. But that's sort of the big thing. But we're, you know, I guess in a place of excitement. We've got tools, you know, we've got knowledge, we know where it's coming from, and so we've got work to do, but I'm feeling much more confident that we have a situation that, you know, we're going to be much more, I don't know, empowered. Empowered. Yes.
Yeah. Empowered as parents. Because, you know, a lot of times as parents, we're just running around going like, you know, what do we do next? Because when our house is in a state of tension or upheaval or energy, and, you know, where it's just like, can't we just have a nice family night? And somehow those things keep escaping us. Or, you know, we've gone through those situations in our household too, where you're just like, can't we just all get along? You know, it's just that type of thing. As a parent, it can get frustrating, but it sounds like that's what you're saying, is now you're confident that you have the tools that'll empower you.
Yeah.
To really focus on your kids' needs while not forgetting your needs, because
right.
You know, you can't get out of whack. You've got to be there for them in a way that's really empathetic and patient while they ride their own roller coaster.
Yeah, and draw the line, the boundary, you know what, guys, for example, if they're having an argument, as long as they're not hurting each other, they've got to develop the skills to, you know, figure out how to get out of the argument too with some guidance, but, you know, not necessarily, in my mind, own getting them out of the argument or whatever it is. But yeah,
which was a script for you. I mean, that's what a nurturer does. The nurturer goes in and nurtures and saves everybody, right? But we also know that if we save our kids all the time now, then they're going to grow up to expect to be saved, right? So we haven't really raised them to be the adults that are going to be able to provide and take care of themselves. They're just going to be waiting emotionally for someone else to come save them. So you've taken a lot from this program and what you've learned about your psychology, and you're applying it in a lot of different ways. So that's pretty exciting, Beth. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for your family, because this is just going to be a collective breath as these things just start sort of falling away over the upcoming weeks and months. And honestly, what we find, and you'll see this when you get to the graduate group, is that a lot of the graduates, you know, 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later, they're like, it just keeps getting easier. Like, they're like, because it is a process, right? Yeah. And they're like, wow, you know, and so that's kind of what's next for you that I'm excited about.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, Beth, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for being one of our spectacular clients. You've been amazing. And I wish you all the well on the journey. We're going to see you in the alumni group. Well, we've got one more call today, but I totally appreciate you being here. So it's a huge deal.
Thank you too, Kate, for just sharing all of your experience and knowledge and making it accessible for all of us. And it's been a great time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Beth. I appreciate you.